So, hello, guys. Hello, guys. So, today we're going to focus on the topic of congenital defects during fetal development. So, congenital defects. Congenital defects are classified into neural chip defects, cardiovascular defects, gastrointestinal defects, musculoskeletal defects. So, firstly, in this part 1 of this video, we are going to focus on the neural tube defects. So we have spina bifida, meningocele, myelomengocele, encephalocele, Chiari, malformation, holoprocephalus, and hydrocephalus. So, firstly, for neural tube defects, they occur due to the failure of the closure of the neural tube. Here, this is a neural tube which occurs at week 3. So this is spina bifida, which is a neural tube defect. So what happens is that during neural tube development, the failure of the closure of the neural tube result in the development of this congenital defect, which is called the spina bifida. So what causes the failure of development or the failure of closure, right? So here, sometimes during pregnancy, a pregnant woman may lack folic acid, folate, which is vitamin B9. So deficiency of vitamin B9, which is folic acid, result in the failure of the closure of the neural tube. So this failure of the closure of the neural tube will result in the protrusion of the spinal cord and its content out. So here, the spina bifida is also divided according to where it occurred. For example, it may occur in the cervical region, lumbar region, or sacral region. So in the first diagram here is in the lumbar region. Then let's look at that diagram. You see these diagrams, they are for the first one is in the lumbar region. For the second one, it seems like in the sacral region. But you look at the second one, it's closed, right? The contents of the spina bifida, the spinal cord and its dura mater, they are enclosed. So it's closed spina bifida, the last picture, number B. So next, this is a cervical spina bifida which occur on the cervical region, right? Then we go to the next neural tube defect. We are focusing on neural tube defect. We said neural tube defect occur due to the failure of the closure of the neural tube. What causes the failure of the closure of the neural tube is the deficiency of the folic acid, which is also called the folate or vitamin B9, right? So let's look on the encephalocele. Encephalocele is another neural tube defect. It occurs due to the failure of the closure of the neural tube, right? So here, the neural tube will fail to close in the cephalic end. So this results in the protrusion of brain contents, mainly the cerebellum. So the protrusion of cerebellum and its content result in the formation of the encephalocele. You see this child, they have seems like a bulge and or a skin, and This skin seems like they have some contents, but the contents are the brain, mainly the cerebrum, right? So this is encephalosome. So on this picture, it may occur on the frontal side. The skull, if the parts of the skull are not intact, so therefore the brain protrudes out. Sometimes for the encephalocele to occur is due to the neural tube, as we mentioned. So the neural tube may fail to close, therefore there will be the production of chirin. The chirin is produced by chirin 2 cells. Those chirin 2 cells results cause the herniation of the brain out. So if there is production of the chirin, which is produced by chirin 2 cells, they will cause the protrusion of the brain out, right? So this is the frontal, this is the nasal frontal, which is in the nasal region, then in between the eyes. Then there is the parietal, orbital, and nasal also. And these are encephalocele. So put in mind that the brain is contained inside the skin for the encephalocele is the neural tube defect. So next we go to another neural tube defect known as anencephaly. Anencephaly, right? So what happens to anencephaly is the failure of the development of the brain. So on anencephaly, the brain may develop partially, or the brain may fail to develop totally. So it's divided into hollow anencephaly, microencephaly, which is partial, hollow, which is total. So sometimes we put in mind that is it a neural tube defect? How come the failure of the development of the brain be the part of the neural tube development defect? So here we go. The neural tube in the cephalic end has some cells. Those cells in the neural tube will develop into the brain and the other parts of the brain, not the brain but the other parts of the brain, mainly the cerebrum, right? Cerebrum, which comes from the neural tube. But the other parts of the neural tube of the brain do not come from the neural tube. So those cells, if the neural tube fail to develop, or if the neural tube fail to close so that the brain may be enclosed, because if the neural tube is not did not close, therefore the brain may fail to develop, because the brain needs to develop in an enclosed region, right? So this is ancephaly. Ancephaly, there is holoancephaly, microencephaly, right? So these are the images. You see the children. So this image, last image, seems like the child do not have brain. So these, for people with these defects, they do not live. They are born still, they do not survive. But let's look, for those with the partial, they may be helped to survive for a short period of time. Let's go to another neural tube defect, which is hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus. This congenital defect. So this congenital defect, it is due to neural tube defect. What happens to this one is there is accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid in the skull, right? There is nothing, just accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid. What causes the accumulation of cerebrospinal fluid is those child type 2 cells we were talking about. If they form, they will be the production of child. Child result in the herniation of the brain, but the brain is inside the skull. The brain may herniate, right, but it won't protrude outside the skull. Sometimes the brain may just develop. If the brain develops, right, and it will the block the movement of the cerebrospinal fluid. So the cerebrospinal fluid will be blocked its movement due to overgrowth of the brain. So if the cerebrospinal is blocked, meaning the cerebrospinal fluid will be contained inside the skull. Is blocked? No way now. So it's going to be contained inside the skull. So this will result in the increase in size of the head. So now we go to another defect. Here there are different defects. Here there are types of spina bifida. So let's talk about the 3 types of spina bifida. Let's start with occultum. So this is hidden spina bifida. We talk about the meningocele. So in meningocele and the myelomeningocele, there is protrusion of both the membrane of the spinal cord together with the spinal cord. So myelomeningocele, this protrusion of both the membrane and the spinal cord. But in meningocele, there is protrusion of the membrane that covers the spinal cord, only the membrane in meningocele. But myelomeningocele is both the spinal cord and the membrane. So the slides are done. Thank you very much.